Welcome to episode 5 of the initial segment 5, part 5, whatever, of the initial episode. Now I'm getting confused. Welcome back. We were talking, let's see, what were we talking about? The psychological stuff. We're going to periodically review those issues, and that's why I'm really laying all this groundwork, because I'll be referring back to these things from time to time, and I just want to lay the groundwork now. So today, if you recall, the topics summary page that we briefly discussed, the third item down, administration and policy, is essentially what we're going to focus on today. And I want to do that because I think it is important that we recognize what has happened to the church and to that organization that was originally started by, of course, the Lord, but through the instrumentality of Joseph Smith. And so I think it's important for us to take a look at the differences, and really the best way to do that now, and what I want to do now, is lay the groundwork and show you what we have now and what now exists currently. And then we can kind of juxtapose as we go what we started with and how it's different now. I want to say that as we go through this, again, it's going to be difficult at times for the true blue Mormons to get through this part, because many of them have no idea about how the church is currently organized. And if I said to you, there is no church, I have a feeling there would be those who would find that sort of difficult, I guess. And so let's start right from the top with that. Now, there is a church. There is a religious society, as it were, and as it is called in the corporate documentation, which we're going to look at. But let me show you something else first. This is a page from the church's website at lds.org. Rights and use information. It's the current update. As we look at this, it tells you what is available for use and how you can use the various resources on the website. What are the copyrights? What are the various restrictions and so on? Now, notice here in the very second paragraph, titled Licenses and Restrictions, the paragraph starts, "This site is owned and operated by Corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints." Well, isn't that interesting? That's a name many people have never heard of. Well, let's go down to the bottom of the page. Same page, we're just going all the way to the bottom, and we see trademarks. And the following, it says, is a non-exhaustive list of church trademarks and service marks, and the very first item listed is, this is a trademark again, The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is a trademark. It's a trademark. There is no registered with any governmental or religious association, body, registration entity. There is no formal registration anywhere of an entity called The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Sorry. This is, again, at the bottom there, it says, these marks are identifiers of, and again we hear this name, Corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or, now we have a new name, Intellectual Reserve Incorporated. Okay, so these are registered in the United States and other countries. So you've probably heard that name, Intellectual Reserve, before, because you see it at the end of every general conference session. There's a copyright at the bottom of the screen that says copyright, Intellectual Reserve, and the year and all that sort of good stuff. So we find out now that there are two official entities involved here that we're discussing. One is Corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and then Intellectual Reserve. Okay, well, let's further delve into this by looking at, well, if this is a corporation, then obviously there have to be corporate papers somewhere. Well, let me show them to you. Now, this is the first page. There are a couple of other pages. Actually, I think only 2 pages. And part of this you'll see on the second page. I will give you a link to the full articles of incorporation down below. But for our purposes, this is really all we need to see. Okay, articles of incorporation of the. The is not a part of the name. So if you say, this is the corporation, no, it's Corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So if you ever get in a trivia contest with somebody, that's the real name. Okay, so this is the first page, County of Salt Lake. Can't remember the year. Again, you can get all that detail in the link down below. I just want to show you a couple things here. Now, first, the name of this corporation shall be, as we've seen, Corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And by the way, on the next page, it tells you that this is a corporation sole, S-O-L-E, which means, very simply, that the president of this corporation owns it all. And the president of this corporation is the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We'll see some more about that in a minute. And you say, well, wait a second. If the church isn't really a church, if it's just a trademark, how can there be a president of it? Well, we'll kind of see that in a minute. And it'll work out. That's not a big deal, to be very frank with you. That's not a fighting, those aren't fighting words. For those who are going to pick a fight with the Mormon church. And I know people that'll say, well, it's not even a church, it's a trademark. Well, kind of. And I frankly don't necessarily find anything wrong with not having the church, formally registered or recognized with the government or anybody else. Anyway, let's continue. So the name, so this is a corporate sole, which means that the president owns all of it. And as such, if Thomas S. Monson wanted to turn all of the Ward buildings into McDonald's, I suppose he has the legal right to do that. Now, obviously, he's not going to do that because this is such an enormous cash cow. He probably makes more money this way than if they turned it into a McDonald's franchise. Anyway, so let's go back to the document. So we know the name. Now, the next item that's important is, and this is the second article, the object of this corporation. Now we get to the nitty-gritty. The object of this corporation shall be to acquire, hold, and dispose of such real and personal property as may be conveyed or acquired. As may be conveyed to or acquired by said corporation for the benefit of the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Okay, now they're treating this as if it is an organization, a religious society, So it's a society. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is a religious society. Okay, got it. For the benefit of religion or works of charity and for public worship. Okay, okay. This corporation, it continues, shall have power without any authority or authorization from the members of said church or religious society to grant, sell, convey, rent, mortgage, exchange, or otherwise dispose of any or all, any part or all of such property. So again, the guy that owns this thing owns it all and can do whatever he wants to with it. Okay, well, we've established something very interesting. And again, on the next page, as you can see for yourself, if you follow the link, if you're interested, it talks about the structure being a corporate soul, S-O-L-E. I know there's a play on words there, but it is S-O-L-E, meaning that the guy that is named the president of this owns it all. And so that's it. The church is a religious society that isn't really formally, well, you say, but the name is on every building. Yeah, I know. So it actually is something. It's just something that is kind of nebulous and floats around inside these buildings that are owned by Corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now, that may mean something to you. It may mean nothing. You may say, so what? Who cares? Well, I don't know. Maybe nobody. What do I know after all? Let's move on, however, and maybe we can answer that question. Okay, a number of years ago, actually in 2012, Business Week magazine, y'all know Business Week, published an article, very interesting article called How the Mormons Make Money. It was in July 18th of 2012, and they created this organizational chart of the church and its various corporate subsidiaries, all wholly owned by the various uplinks, whatever. It's my old multi-level marketing history coming out. I've done that sort of thing in a lot of years, but anyway. So we see at the top the corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and directly into that are 5 entities. Intellectual Reserve, we've seen that, and that is directly overseen by the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Of course, they oversee all of it, but specifically, they pay some attention to Intellectual Reserve. Polynesian Cultural Center, on the other side, the Education Division, BYU, and all of the church education. Then Deseret Trust Company, and now in the middle is the biggie, Corporation of the Presiding Bishop of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This has a number of entities underneath it, which are real estate companies, land development companies, farming and ranching corporations, broadcasting corporations, publishing corporations. You'll see down at the bottom there, Beneficial Financial Group, that's huge, life insurance, and some others. Okay, this is a pretty significant corporate structure. And each of these companies obviously has its own CEO and has its own, in some cases, board of directors or management group, C-level managers, various sorts, CEOs and CFOs and so on and so forth. And so this is a pretty massive, multi-billion-dollar, multinational corporation, corporate conglomerate, if you will. And so it's huge. It's worth by most, of course, you don't know because it's all owned by one guy and he's not talking. but by all estimates, we're looking at somewhere in the $30 billion range, and that's probably conservative. It's probably very conservative. But anyway, pretty significant organization. I mean, a lot of people involved now, a lot of money involved. But what fuels it all, what is the cash cow that makes it all work so that they can make mistakes here and there and get away with it, is the $3 to $5 billion a year that the church takes in tithing. Now, you have these, these are for-profit companies, most of them, and yet they make a lot of money. So this is a major corporate structure. Okay, another outfit, actually several years prior to this, did another study, Arizona Republic. They produced this and published it in 1991. Now, this is a little more complicated, and you can't see all the titles. I know that, but I wanted to get it on one. I thought of making two screens out of it, but I thought it's just more impressive to see the whole thing. Now, down below to the right, you see some radio stations there. The church has since divested itself, sold a number of these radio stations, so they don't exist anymore in the corporate structure. They've taken the resources and are now putting them into internet resources as opposed to radio resources. But the rest of it's accurate, and when you look at this, you see at the top, Corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it has a line going down to a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, I'm not going to read them all, but each of those boxes is a company. And then you go to the right, and a whole page of other boxes, all under the Corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Huge. And then, see, these are all under the same boxes. If we broke it out into more detail, this is from the previous screen, you see, then you'd get this. And then to the left of the box at the top, you see the Corporation of the Presiding Bishop, and then all those boxes directly down below it. So this is just a massive corporate conglomerate, multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerate. And the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12 Apostles sit at the top. Now, do they manage day-to-day operations? Of course not. They have managers, they have CEOs that all operate these various entities, and so they don't have to deal with day-to-day operations, but they certainly sit at the top of the food chain and make decisions based on what they decide. And hence, the reason you have seen over the past 50 years, men have, we used to have men in the Quorum of the 12 and the First Presidency who were wonderful scriptorians, church historians, men who knew church history well, who knew the gospel well, who could quote scripture from you right and left. They didn't always get it right, much as I love some of these old guys. Bruce McConkie's a favorite. No mistake about that. Bruce McConkie's a favorite, and I'm not going to do a Bruce McConkie. But I want to so much, but I'm not. He wasn't perfect, and he made some boneheaded errors. And that's just the way it is. That's okay. He was human. Big surprise. So are we all. But we look at this today and we see that the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12 have been filled with businessmen. And they barely know the scriptures. They barely know the gospel. They stand and give conference talks that are, well, I'm not going to disparage these guys. I really, because they don't write their talks anyway. It's pretty widely known they all have ghost writers. They don't have time to write conference talks. And their talks have to go through the correlation committee and the public relations committee to make sure they're not going to make any giant faux pas, that all is on the up and up, and so on and so forth. So they just read their talks. Ever since Ronald J. Pullman in 1984, and we went over that one last time, the brethren have just said, there's no way we're letting these guys speak by the Spirit, because who knows what they're going to say. And so they have hired hardcore, serious, very successful business people as members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles and the First Presidency. And even though, and we'll look at this more in the future, in future episodes, but when you go back to the way that Joseph and the Lord set up the church, it was a very much a separation of authority structure, very much like the United States government. You had the Senate in the beginning, which was a representative of the states. Every state appointed their 2 senators and sent them to Washington to be advocates for their state's affairs and for states' rights in general. And then the people elected those in the House of Representatives to represent the people. And the people held the purse strings, thinking that people would be wise enough not to spend money where they shouldn't. Oh, well. Who said that? I should look that up. I'll look it up someday. Somebody said as soon as the people figure out they've got the purse strings, that's the end of it. And it certainly is. Anyway, in like manner, Joseph made sure when he set up the first presidency that if there was a vacancy in the first presidency, and we'll go over all this again. This is still overview time, folks. This is not detail time. I'm going into some detail with some of this, but we'll go into all of this, and I'll show you the scriptures. The vacancies in the first presidency were filled outside of the other quorums from general membership in the church. Vacancies in the Quorum of the 12 were filled outside of the 70 or the first presidency. Members, vacancies in the 70 were filled from the general membership, and so on. Never was a member of the Quorum of the 12 replaced by a 70. Never was a member of the first presidency replaced by either a 70 or an apostle. These were quorums, the first presidency constituting a quorum, the Quorum of the 12, the 70, and the High Council, by the way, were all equal in authority. Did you know that? And the elders are in the apostles. Sorry, senior moment. The apostles had no authority other than where there was not an established stake in the church. They were to go out and teach folks and organize folks outside of established stakes. It was the High Council and his stake who had the final authority. Well, nowadays you have apostles calling stake presidents saying, you have to do this, you have to do that. You have to excommunicate this guy. So we don't like him. Well, and then if the stake president says, you know what, you're flying a kite up the wrong tree here. What does that mean? I don't know. Well, they'll just replace the stake president and replace him with somebody who will do what they want. That's how power works. And it happens frequently enough that it's a problem. But today, you see, 70s move on to very often to the Quorum of the 12. The Quorum of the 12 always move on to the first presidency. That is a consolidation of power which can only breed corruption and unrighteous dominion. And that's why Joseph wrote what he wrote from Liberty Jail about about leadership in the 121st section of the Doctrine and Covenants. From verse 34 to the end, that is a warning to the rank and file of the church to beware of church leadership. So much for leadership not leading the church astray. And when you consider that there were those, and we're going to go over this again, and I think I may have mentioned it before, that there were those who conspired against Joseph, who were from his very counselors and those senior leaders in the church who conspired against him to cause his death. They were complicit in his death. So much for leadership not leading the church astray. I mean, from the very beginning, it's been a problem. Okay, so we've established this corporate structure, this multi-billion-dollar, multinational corporate conglomerate that consists of publishing companies, broadcasting companies, television companies, real estate companies, real estate development companies, ranching, farming concerns, all manner of for-profit companies, all owned by the church, all owned by corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the leadership, the top 15 men in the church, sit at the top of that corporation. Now, again, they do not run the day-to-day operations, but they do have a say in what goes on, and they review all that goes on. Now, I'm going to play a little clip, and I have to tell you that David A. Bednar, from the very time he was made an apostle, has been a favorite of mine. I like the guy. I think he's a personable guy. I like to listen to him. I like his voice. But he's just another man who sits in a position to have to juggle, to have to obfuscate, to prevaricate. And while the things that he says may, in fact, be technically true, sorry, folks. If you don't know what the word prevarication means, go look it up. You won't like it. Listen to this, and then we'll talk about it.
Everywhere we travel, we are to find individuals or families. That would be exactly the same today as it was anciently. So it's not a large corporation, and the apostles are not the board of directors. This is an individual work. The Savior knows people by name. He knows their circumstances, and he directs us in our work to bless the lives of individuals, not run a gigantic organization.
Okay. Again, what he says is technically, no, the Quorum of the 12 are not the board of directors per se. They don't have that title. But are they in the corporate structure the equivalent? Yeah, they are. And there's no ifs, ands, buts, or otherwise about that. So we have here a problem. We have apostles prevaricating, obfuscating, trying to make something appear that it isn't what it is. I look at his office, and when he says it's just the same as it was in olden times, and I think, Peter, James, and John, and Andrew, and all those guys, and the Savior, they never had offices that looked like that. You got to be kidding me. We're going to leave it at that, folks. And we're going to take a look at some other interesting things in the next episode. So, I, again, appreciate you being here. And we'll see you. Look at that. Right on 30 minutes. Beautiful. See you next time.
15 miles to Provo, and I'm standing in the desert sun, trying to hitch a ride. Not a sign of